Yo, 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 what is going on? It is the Crazy Rider right here, right now, back with Chapter 10 of my Invader Zim fanfiction. Chapter 10 already. It is hard to believe we've made it this far. Before we know it, we'll be finishing this whole series up. Now, there was one other thing I was supposed to say here. What was it? Oh, that's right. As you can see from the title, we have made it to the Moose episode. You know what that means. It's time for another accent. That's right. The narration of this chapter will be read entirely in a Canadian accent. Woohoo! I'm excited for this one. So excited that I don't want to delay it another moment. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy it all. Right here, right now, Chapter 10. Moose Business. Zim and I were down in the lab. He was watching monitors of our classmates bullying him. A few came up of them bullying the both of us. The clips transitioned entirely to Dib picking on Zim and trying to get information out of him. Most of them I broke up whatever fight there was, and I stood up for Zim when I was able to. The clips ended and Zim stared at the screen angrily. "What's Zim thinking?" I asked Zim. Zim didn't answer right away. He sat in his chair and I sat on the floor behind him. When he did answer, he didn't move at all. "Something must be done about these stink humans. They must pay for treating Zim so horribly." "What you do?" I asked with concern for my old friend Dib. Zim turned in his chair towards me. "Begone, pup. I have important matters to attend to and will see you tomorrow at school." "But—" "Leave!" Zim shouted. The next day at school, Zim almost immediately asked to use the restroom and spent 3 hours in there. Miss Bitters was saying something about cannibalism or something when Dib shot a hand in the air. "Yes, Dib." "Miss Bitters, Zim's trip to the restroom has lasted a real long time." I know that Bitters doesn't care much for Dib at all, and only sees him as a nuisance, like many others. "I recall you spending quite a long time in there recently as well." "That was corn and mayonnaise day," Dib argued. "Oh, that's no excuse. He's up to something, I just know it," Dib said to himself, and Bitters growled at him. At that moment, Zim slammed open the classroom door and let out a sigh of relief. "Ah, my business is done," he announced before taking his seat. Dib stood there with his arms crossed, glaring at Dib. "Who takes 3 hours to go to the bathroom before lunch, Zim?" Zim was sitting back in his desk until Dib asked that question. Zim slammed his hand on the desk. "Nonsense! I had much to do. So much!" Zim still hadn't told me anything about this mysterious plan he had to take revenge on our classmates. This did seem to be a habit of his to keep his plans a secret until the last minute. As long as it didn't make me break my promise to keep Dib safe, I wasn't too worried. The loudspeaker suddenly came on and I heard the familiar voice of Gur. "Greetings, children of Earth! This is your new schoolmaster. A special surprise mandatory field trip is happening for the following lucky children: Morla, Blen, everyone in Miss Bitters' class except for Zim, and Liz." I suspiciously furrowed my brow at this news. Zim and Dib were staring at each other with fury. "And especially Dib." Dib's eyes grew wide at the mention of his name. "All these children get to go to a special place made entirely of food. I like food. Now check this out!" Gur started beatboxing and I saw Zim take out a remote and press a button, shutting off the speakers. Miss Bitters was bitterly dismissing the other children. Dib rushed up and pointed at Zim. "What about Zim and Liz? Why aren't they going?" Zim played sad. "I guess we're just not smart enough, are we, Liz?" A big bully smacked Zim's head into the desk and called us both stupid, Zim sat back up. It hurts me to see all you dirty monsters go off to have so much fun. I guess Liz and I will just have to stay and study harder." Dib told Miss Bitters to watch Zim closely, and she growled at him again before he and the others exited. I whispered to Zim, "Are you going to tell me what's going on yet?" "Not quite," Zim whispered and grinned back at me. "All in good time, my filthy wolf friend, all in good time." I looked out the class window and watched the kids file into a bus with Dib being the last. He rightfully looked around suspiciously before stepping on, with the door closing behind him. "Now open up your textbooks and begin memorizing the copyright information," instructed Miss Bitters. "You will be quizzed on this." Zim raised his hand. "Miss Bitters, I have a mighty need to use the restroom once again." "Okay, but that's your last restroom break for the rest of the school year." Zim saluted and headed for the door. "Zim, please tell me what this is all about," I begged as Zim reached the doorway. "I will when I return. Do not question Zim!" And he exited. I looked at Miss Bitters for a moment and she glared at me. I surrendered and tried to focus on the textbook. But I couldn't focus. I was too worried about Dib and what Zim had planned for him. I didn't care about the other kids. They could all go get beaten up by a moose for all I cared. After Zim was gone for a good while and I realized me trying to study under these conditions was impossible, I decided to try and coax Bitters into dismissing everything. I crawled out of my desk and carried myself on all fours to her desk. I lifted myself so that my arms and head were on the front of her desk, looking up at her. "What do you want? Don't tell me you need to use the bathroom too." "You know, Miss Bitters, it's obvious that this waste of time. I mean, look at place. Class empty. Everyone on some glorious field trip. Zim got explosive diarrhea. You not want be here, and I not want be here. It clear nothing going get done around here today." "What's your point, Liz?" "What you say we take day off. You can go home and do whatever you do on day off. Zim can enjoy toilet time without missing anything important, and I can, chase rabbits or something. What you say?" "Not gonna argue with you." Miss Bitters stood from her chair and she flew out the door in that weird way of hers. I ran out the door on all fours to the nearby boys' washroom, I made sure the coast was clear before pushing the door open and sniffing around the room. "Zim, are you here?" I heard no response and saw no legs under any of the stalls. I sniffed my way closer to the 3 stalls. There was a strangely familiar smell coming from the middle stall, and I pushed the door open. The toilet didn't look too out of the ordinary, but there was definitely a different smell to it, and it wasn't what you'd expect from a toilet. I realized it smelled strongly of Gur and faintly of Zim. They were definitely in here. But where could they have gone? I decided to find out via the watch. Usually Zim is the first one to contact me through the watch, but I clicked the button and started calling for Zim. "Zim? Zim? Pick up, damn it!" Finally Zim answered and I saw his out-of-disguise face. "What do you want, Liz? I'm in the middle of executing my brilliant plan." "That what I call you for," I shouted at him. "Now tell me what your stinking plan." "Well, I was just about to explain it to the Dib child, but now that you're here, I guess you can both hear it. You see, as the Dib has already figured out, and I'm sure you have as well, this is a trap. You two are really the only ones who can appreciate the amazingness of this plan, so I'll let you both in on what it is. Liz, what are you doing?" I left the washroom and the school and was running all the way back to Zim's base on all fours. "Keep going, I listening," I shouted down at the watch. "Very well. Anyway," Zim continued, "look out the window, would you, Dib?" I could hear Dib screaming and Zim laughing in the background. I had no idea where the bus was, or where it was going, so my only chance to save Dib was to go straight to Zim and talk him into stopping this whole thing. My mission might not be as exciting without you around to annoy me, Dib, but it will be more pleasant. Zim, please, I pleaded while running down the street. Where you send bus? Dib and his fellow busmates all smelled their fate the moment they stood in the way of my mission of doom. But you, destroying you, Dib, will be the greatest victory. I ran around the final corner and saw Zim's little green house just a block away. I heard Dib's voice. No! Liz promised me that I'd be spared in your world domination. You can't do this, Zim. I was now on the property and running through the door. I figured destroying you would upset Liz, which is why I didn't let her in on this plan until it was too late to stop it. That is, right now. Zim started laughing again. You're not going to get away with this, Zim. I heard Dib shout as I pounced into the room to find Zim talking on the monitor to Dib. I already got away with it. See? Look out the window. I would say I'd gotten away with it pretty nicely. I muted the watch so that there was no sound coming from it, but Zim didn't think I'd hung up on him, eh? I started to sneak up behind him as Dib looked out the window of the bus to see outer space. You're launching your enemies into space? That's your plan? Dib saw me behind Zim and made eye contact with me for a moment, but didn't give me away. This is crazy! Launching you into space is only— Ah! I had jumped onto Zim and tried to get past him to the controls to turn that bus around. No! Computer! Restrain the wolf child! Come on, Liz, take him! I knew you wouldn't let him get away with this! A series of wires and claw hands started trying to capture me, but I fought with the fierceness of my inner wolf. With me being distracted, Zim continued. As I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted, this is just the first part of my plan. Now is where the fun really starts. Liz, look out! I heard Dib's voice shout a little too late. A mechanical hand had grabbed me and lifted me to the ceiling. I struggled, but was not strong enough for it. On the screen I saw some sort of shiny light open up in front of the bus. The bus drifted towards it, and Dib looked out the window at it. A wormhole? Is that a wormhole? I laughed. They're not wormhole. I see wormholes in ground, and wormholes not look like that. A mechanical arm shut off my mouth and kept me silent. Impressed yet? Zim asked Dib. Well, I mean, it's better than just launching us into space. The bus was then caught in the gravitational pull of the shiny knot wormhole. The wormhole is only phase 2 of my scheme. There's more? Dib asked with worry in his voice and eyes. So much more. Zim started tapping a few buttons, I researched many different wormholes with many different possible outcomes. It was very difficult deciding which would be the most horrible for you. One wormhole would have spat you out into a dimension of pure itching. An image of some green substance came on the screen. You can't really tell, but that stuff's really itchy. Another would have sent you to a dimension of pure dookie. An image came on the screen that I would prefer not to talk about. Dib and I both tried to look away from the horror. But I chose this particular wormhole especially for the occasion. Dib and I were both sweaty with worry. You see, at the end of this wormhole lies a room with a moose. Zim shouted the last part, and the image of a moose in a white room came on screen. I bit down on the computer arm as Dib screamed, No! Wait a minute. Did you say a room with a moose? Yes. Your fear is overwhelming, no? No. Dib stepped closer to the monitor. What's so scary about a room with a stupid moose in it? I finally managed to spit the computer arm out of my mouth so that I could correct and warn Dib. Dib, not be fooled. Mooses very aggressive creatures. My pack lost Alpha to Moose. Zim had been looking at me as I spoke, and now looked back at Dib. The she-wolf speaks the truth. You should be in great fear of the mighty moose. Now, Dib, I leave you to your, Gur was whispering a suggestion to Zim. Moosey fate! Say moosey fate! Your moosey fate. Gur giggled with glee and Zim started laughing maniacally, and then shut the monitor off. The computer arm finally released me, and I was dropped to the ground. On 2 feet I pounced at Zim and grabbed him by the collar, Zim, you turn bus around this instant! Oh, I can't do that, Zim told me sadistically. The bus is in the impossible-to-escape gravity of the wormhole. Even if I wanted to, we couldn't possibly save them now. But Dib, my friend, I promise I not let anything happen to him. You'll get over your loss, Liz. Zim turned and looked at the blank screen. With that stink human out of the way, you and I can finally focus on our main goal of taking over the world. He looked back at me and let his voice get calm and almost sympathetic. Isn't that what you wanted, Liz? To bring the wolves together and dominate the humans? Don't tell me you've forgotten that Dib is a human too. A human that wants to stop our plan. I was at Zim's side and grabbed his arm. We not have to kill Dib to dominate Earth. You can put him out of way, but not kill him. I not care about anybody else on planet, but please. My eyes teared up for the first time since being separated from my pack. No, let Dib die. Zim's face grew with disappointment, and he turned his back to me again. It seems I was wrong about you, filthy wolf child. I thought you were going to dominate the world with me, but if the death of one puny human is going to affect you so much, I guess you're just not worthy of this job. I said nothing as a tear slid silently down my cheek. Zim continued to avoid looking my way. Get out, he finally whispered. Zim, get out. He finally turned and shouted at me, get out of my lair and off of my base before I decide to destroy you as well. I stood my ground, staring at him in disbelief for a moment. Zim stepped closer to me, filled with a rage that he's never directed at me before, I said get out! It was finally enough to make me leave. I didn't quite know where to go. I couldn't go home yet, knowing Dib's fate. I went to the membrane house and found Gaz watching TV. I didn't even bother howling or knocking or anything. I just walked in. Gaz was wondering where Dib was, but didn't seem all that concerned. I didn't have the heart to tell her, so I just left without saying a word. I went up to the hill that oversees the city, the place people go to stargaze and enjoy their levers. It was mostly empty tonight, and I looked up at the dimming sky. Stars were starting to come out, and I did something I'd never done before. I prayed. I don't know who or what I was praying to, but I prayed. Please, 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 let Dib be safe. If anyone get out of this, he can. Please live, Dib, please live. I lowered my head and buried my face in the grass. I inhaled the smell of the grass as I watered the dark green blades with my tears. I heard some sort of flying machine overhead after a minute of crying. It's just a jet, I thought. But then it was getting closer and louder. Jets never come this close to the ground here. I looked up and saw a school bus flying towards our school. I rubbed my eyes, thinking I was imagining it, but the image didn't go away. Dib! I cried and jumped in the air before running down the hill towards the school. By the time I made it to the front of the school and Most of the kids had piled out of the bus and were complaining about the worst field trip ever. I looked around for Dib but didn't see him. "Dib?" I called out. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a figure standing in the door of the bus. I looked over and saw Dib grinning proudly. "Dib!" I ran to my old friend. "You alive! You made it!" I jumped to 2 feet and hugged my Dib friend. "I did it, Liz! I saved us all! I knew you could do! I knew you could!" Whew! That was a long, hard read. I do a lot of voices and accents, but that was definitely the hardest on my throat. And this is the longest chapter in the entire story, at just short of 8 pages. I'm not sure what my next accent will be or when, but I've got plenty of options up my sleeve. I'll see you little darlings next time for chapter 11, and remember, keep your crazy, eh?